In the cold shadow of the Greyspire Mountains, the ancient dragon Arden lived in silence. He had seen many winters come and go. Once, dragons had ruled the skies with pride, but now they were hunted, feared, and forgotten. The world below had changed. Humans had built kingdoms and armies. They feared dragons as monsters, and they told stories of fire and death. Arden had no wish to fight anymore. He had lost too much. So he lived alone, deep within a high mountain cave, where the wind sang softly through stone halls. One stormy night, when rain fell like arrows and thunder rolled over the peaks, Arden heard something unusual. It was not the cry of wind or the growl of thunder. It was softer, fainter. It sounded like a human voice. Curious, he spread his great wings and lifted himself from his resting place. His wings beat against the storm, shaking the rain into mist. The air was cold and sharp, but Arden was older than the mountain itself, and the storm could not harm him. He followed the sound through the dark until he reached the lower valley, where the river ran swollen and wild. There, through sheets of rain, he saw the wreckage of a caravan. Broken wagons lay scattered on the mud, wheels splintered, horses gone. The smell of smoke and iron filled the air. Arden's golden eyes narrowed. He could see no movement, no sign of life, until the sound came again. A cry. Small. Weak. He lowered his massive head, steam curling from his nostrils, and found the source of the sound. A tiny bundle lay beside one of the wagons. The blanket around it was soaked and torn. Inside, a human baby stirred, its face pale and cold. Arden tilted his head, puzzled. Why would a human child be left here, alone in the storm? He could see no other living soul, only the marks of panic, footprints leading away half-washed by rain. The caravan must have been attacked, perhaps by bandits or beasts. Arden's great claws trembled slightly as he reached down. The baby's cry grew louder at the sound of his breathing. She was so small, so fragile. He could end her life with one careless breath. For a long moment he said nothing, only watching her. Her tiny hand reached out, fingers curling toward him, though she could not possibly know what he was. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he had not known in centuries. Long ago, before the wars, dragons had been guardians of life. They had kept balance in the world. He remembered that duty now like a half-forgotten dream. Gently, Arden lifted the child between two claws. The baby stopped crying. She looked up at him with wide blue eyes, her breath soft and warm. Against all reason, the dragon felt a flicker of warmth in his ancient heart. He carried her back to his cave, keeping his wings curved above her like a roof against the rain. The storm followed them, rumbling and flashing, but within his wings she was safe. When he laid her upon a bed of furs near the firestone that glowed within his cave, she smiled in her sleep. Arden watched her through the night. He did not sleep. The mountains outside groaned with the storm, but inside the cave there was only the quiet sound of the baby's breathing. At dawn, when the clouds broke and the first light of morning touched the peaks, he made a decision. The world of men had cast her away. If he left her, she would die. And though dragons were feared as destroyers, he would not let this child perish. He would raise her. He did not know what name she once had, if any, so he gave her one of his own making. He called her Ella, meaning light from the ashes in the old tongue of dragons. As days passed, Arden learned the strange habits of humans. He hunted for food that would not frighten or harm her. He kept her warm with the heat of his breath and shielded her from the mountain winds. She grew stronger, smiling whenever she saw him. Her laughter filled the dark halls with a warmth even dragonfire could not match. At first he worried that she would fear him. But she did not. When she grew old enough to walk, she would climb onto his claws and tug gently at his scales, laughing when he lifted her into the air. She learned the sound of his low, rumbling hums and would answer with soft words he could barely understand. In time she began to speak clearly. She called him Arden, though her small voice turned the name into a sweet sound, like a song. Years drifted by like falling snow. Ella learned to read the stars from the mouth of the cave, her eyes bright with wonder. She learned to speak to the mountain winds and to listen to the slow heartbeat of the world. And though she was human, something of the dragon's spirit grew inside her, a calm strength, a steady fire. Arden watched her grow, both proud and afraid. He knew that someday the world below would come searching again. They would not understand what she was, a bridge between dragon and man. But for now, in this quiet place, he could pretend that peace still existed. Sometimes, on clear nights, he would look up at the stars and remember the age when dragons and humans had spoken as equals. He wondered if this child might bring that time again. And sometimes as Ella slept, she would murmur in dreams and reach out with her small hand, as she had on the night he found her. Arden would lower his head beside her and listen to her soft breathing. In those moments he felt young again. Outside, the world still burned with fear and war, but within the cave a new bond had been born, a bond stronger than blood, forged between fire and flesh. And though Arden did not yet know it, the day would come when that bond would shake the world itself. Years passed like falling leaves, and the valley of Greyspire grew quiet and peaceful. The storms still came, but inside the mountains warmth and life remained. Ella had grown tall and strong, her once small hands now sure and steady. She climbed cliffs that no other human could, leapt over rivers with ease, and laughed in the face of the sharp mountain winds. Arden watched her with quiet pride. The girl who had once been helpless now moved through the stone halls of his home as if they were part of her. She had learned to listen, not just to the dragon's voice but to the mountain itself. When the wind whispered through the caves, she could understand its mood. When the fire cracked in the hearth, she heard meaning in its rhythm. She could speak to Arden in his own tongue. Her voice, though soft and human, carried the old tones of dragons, deep, strong, and full of feeling. The first time she had spoken to him in that voice, Arden had been so surprised that smoke rose from his nostrils in delight. "You have the heart of flame," he had said, "but also the kindness that fire too often forgets." Each morning, Ella would rise before the sun touched the peaks. She would step to the edge of the cliffs and greet the dawn with a smile. She had learned the names of every mountain and every path. The eagles knew her and they did not fear her. Sometimes she would ride upon Arden's back, holding tight as his wings beat the air. Together they soared high above the clouds, where the world below seemed distant and small. From up there, Ella saw the great forests stretching to the horizon, the rivers glinting like silver ribbons, and far in the distance, the faint smoke of human villages. She often wondered what people lived there, if they were kind, if they still feared dragons. "Do they still hate your kind?" she asked one evening as they sat near the cave mouth, watching the sunset paint the sky in red and gold. Arden's eyes glowed softly. "They do not understand us," he said. "And fear is a heavy thing. It blinds the heart." Ella looked down at her hands. "Then I wish they could see you as I do," she said. "You are not what they believe." The dragon smiled, though sadness lingered behind his gaze. "Perhaps one day they will." Seasons turned again and the bond between them only grew. Ella learned more of the old ways, how to sense warmth in stone, how to call fire from the air by focusing her spirit, and how to quiet her heart so she could hear the heartbeat of the mountain. She could hold her palm out and make the smallest flame dance above it, glowing gold instead of red, like a living spark of her soul. Arden warned her to use it with care. "Fire listens to emotion," he said. "It will burn with your joy, but it will also burn with your anger. You must rule it, not let it rule you." Ella nodded, and though she was young, she understood. She practiced every day, finding balance between power and peace. She often sang to the flames, and the fire would sway to her voice, calm and bright. But peace never lasts forever. One morning, Ella noticed a trail of smoke rising from the far end of the valley, not the gentle white of cooking fires, but dark and heavy like burning wood. She told Arden, and his great wings unfurled at once. Together they flew to the ridge overlooking the outer lands. Below they saw men, dozens of them, riding on horses, carrying banners marked with the sigil of the sun, the royal sign of the southern kingdoms. They had spears tipped with silver and armor that gleamed in the light. "What are they doing here?" Ella asked, worry tightening her voice. Arden's deep rumble rolled like thunder. "They hunt," he said softly. "Always they hunt." Ella's heart sank. She had never seen other humans up close. She had only known the quiet life of the mountains and the kindness of her guardian. To see men armed for war filled her with fear she had never felt before. "Will they hurt us?" she whispered. "They will try," Arden said. "But you must not fear. Fear feeds their courage." Over the next days they watched as the soldiers moved closer, building campfires near the valley's edge. They did not yet know Arden's cave, but they were searching. Ella saw how they spoke of dragons, laughing and boasting that they would slay one by dawn. Their words burned in her chest. "Why do they hate you?" she asked one night as she leaned against Arden's warm scales. "Because they remember only the flames of war," he said. "Not the times when dragons kept the peace. To them we are reminders of their weakness." Ella's brow furrowed. "Then I will show them strength, not with fire but with truth." Arden's golden eyes softened. "You have a brave heart, Ella. But truth is the hardest fire to bear." The next morning she walked alone to the edge of the valley and left a mark on a rock, a simple sign that humans used for peace. It was small, but she hoped it would speak to them. Yet the soldiers, when they found it, only laughed. They thought it was a trick. That night, the wind carried their voices to the cave, words that made Ella's heart ache. They spoke of burning out the beast that lived in the mountains. They said the girl was cursed, a witch raised by fire. Arden heard it too, and his great tail struck the cave floor, sending a quake through the stone. "So it begins," he said quietly. "They will come for us." Ella stood beside him, her face pale but her eyes steady. "Then let them come. I will not run." The dragon turned to look at her, his gaze heavy with both pride and sorrow. "You are human," he said. "They will never see you as one of them again if you stay with me." "I am your child," Ella said. "That is all that matters." Arden bowed his head in silence. The firelight shimmered on his scales like gold, and the cave seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the mountain winds howled, carrying with them the promise of storm and fire. The hunters were coming. And though Ella did not yet know it, the days of peace were ending, and her true test was about to begin. At dawn, the hunters came with steel and fire. The sound of their horns echoed through the valley, sharp and cold. The mountain that had slept peacefully for years now trembled beneath the march of boots and hooves. Smoke from their torches curled into the pale morning sky, and the smell of metal filled the air. From the cave high in the cliffs, Ella woke to the noise. Her heart pounded as she ran to the mouth of the cave. Down below, she could see them, rows of soldiers in armor, their banners marked with the golden sun of the Southern King. Their leader rode a black horse, his voice booming across the rocks. "By order of the crown, the beast in this mountain shall be slain. The witch who walks beside it will share its fate." Ella's breath caught in her throat. She turned to Arden. "They found us," she whispered. The dragon's golden eyes were calm, though sadness filled them. "I knew this day would come," he said softly. "Stay behind me, Ella. Do not run, but do not fight unless you must." She wanted to argue, but his voice left no room for question. Arden stepped out from the cave, his wings unfolding like two vast shadows stretching across the mountain face. His scales caught the sunlight and flashed gold, and his deep voice rolled like thunder through the valley. "She is no threat to you," he said. "Leave her be." The soldiers froze. Many had never seen a dragon before. Their courage shook at the sight. But their leader raised his sword. "Lies. You have poisoned her. You would turn her against her own kind." Arden's eyes narrowed. "I saved her life when your kind abandoned her. I have harmed no one. Leave this place." But fear is a cruel master. It whispers louder than reason. One soldier loosed an arrow. Then another. Soon the air filled with the hiss of flying steel. The arrows clattered harmlessly against Arden's scales, but their sound woke the fire in his chest. He did not wish to harm them, but he could not let them reach Ella. With a single beat of his wings, he sent a gust of wind that knocked the soldiers off their feet. Horses reared and men shouted in fear. "Go," he roared. "Do not make me fight you." But the leader only raised his torch. "The beast breathes fire, we will answer with fire." He threw the torch at the dry grass, and in seconds the lower slopes of the valley were burning. Ella screamed as flames spread toward the river. "Stop it," she cried. She ran to the edge of the cliff, her eyes wide with horror. The fire was wild, alive, out of control. She could feel its heat on her skin, and something deep inside her began to stir. Arden turned toward her, his voice urgent. "Stay back." But it was too late. The soldiers had begun climbing the path toward the cave. Their silver-tipped spears glinted in the light. Arden's wings spread wide once more. He lowered his head and breathed a warning burst of flame above them, not to burn but to drive them back. The soldiers stumbled and fell, shouting in terror. For a moment, Ella thought they might flee. But then she saw it, a group of archers on a ridge, their arrows tipped with something that shimmered blue. "Arden," she shouted. "Behind you." He turned too late. The first arrow struck deep into his chest. The dragon let out a sound that shook the sky. A second and third followed, each one glowing with strange light, a magic made to pierce even dragon hide. Arden stumbled, his claws scraping against the stone. Ella ran to him, tears burning in her eyes. "No. Please get up." Arden's great head lowered until his golden eye met hers. "Do not weep, little one," he said softly. "Live." Another arrow struck his side and his wings faltered. He fell to one knee, his breath coming in sharp bursts. The mountain itself seemed to cry out as his body struck the ground. The soldiers cheered below, thinking victory was theirs. But the sound tore through Ella like a knife. She could feel her heart breaking, and in that breaking something else awoke. A warmth began to spread through her chest, rising through her arms, burning behind her eyes. The fire she had always called gently now roared inside her, wild and unstoppable. The ground trembled beneath her feet. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice shaking the air. The soldiers froze, startled by the echo. He only wanted peace. Her voice grew louder, deeper. The wind swirled around her and sparks leapt from her skin. Her hair lifted in the heat of a light that came from within her. "You feared him," she cried, "because you could not understand him." The fire around the valley rose high, not red or orange but gold, bright, pure and alive. The soldiers covered their eyes as the light burned through the smoke. Arden lifted his head weakly. "Allah," he whispered. She turned toward him, and for the first time he saw not just the girl he had raised but something greater, the union of dragon and human, strength and compassion together. The soldiers began to retreat, shouting in panic. Their leader tried to call them back, but even he trembled as Ella stepped forward. Fire swirled around her like wings. She looked down at them, her eyes glowing with sorrow, not anger. "Leave," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "Leave this mountain, and remember what your fear has done." The flames did not burn them. Instead they showed them images, visions of what had been lost. A dragon sheltering a child, a friendship beyond blood, a peace that could have been. The men dropped their weapons and fled. When the light faded, the valley was quiet again. The fires had gone out, leaving only ash and smoke. Ella fell to her knees beside Arden. His breathing was slow, his eyes dim. She placed her hand on his scales. "Don't go," she whispered. The dragon's voice was faint. "You have my fire now," he said. "Guard it well." His eyes closed and his body grew still. The great heart of Arden, last of the dragons, stopped. The wind fell silent. The sky cleared and golden light touched the peaks once more. Ella bowed her head and wept. But as the sun rose behind her, its light caught the faint glow of flame still burning in her hands, gentle, steady, alive. The fire had not died with Arden. It lived within her now. The hunters raised their weapons again, ready to strike at what they could not understand. But before they could take a single step, the air around them began to tremble. The sound was deep and strange, like the mountain itself was waking from a long sleep. The men looked around in fear, their armor clinking, their torches flickering. Then the sound grew louder, a roar not of a beast but of a human voice. It came from Ella. She stood tall on the rocky slope, her face wet with tears, her hands glowing with golden light. The roar shook the sky and sent the birds flying from the trees. Even the river below seemed to pause. Flames burst from her palms, bright and wild, but they did not burn her. The fire was golden, not red, and it swirled around her like living light. It was not dragon fire. It was something new, something born from love and sorrow. The hunters fell back, their eyes wide as the air grew hot and alive. Ella did not move for a moment. She stood in the center of the storm she had become, her breath slow, her heart heavy. The light around her flickered with her grief. "You came here to destroy," she said softly, her voice carrying across the valley. "You came with fear in your hearts. But you do not understand what you've done." The leader of the hunters, the man with the black horse, lifted his sword again, though his hand trembled. "You are cursed," he shouted. "You are the child of the beast." Ella's eyes met his, glowing like molten gold. "No," she said. "I am his child, and yours. I am human. I am his heart and your mirror." The golden fire spread out from her feet, crawling across the ground like sunlight pouring through cracks in stone. Wherever it touched, the grass grew green again, and the ashes of battle turned to soft soil. The hunters stared in disbelief. The fire was healing the land, not destroying it. Arden's great body lay still behind her, his wings folded, his eyes closed forever. The sight filled her with fresh pain and the fire flared higher. The soldiers stumbled back as the mountain itself seemed to breathe. Rocks shifted and warm winds swept through the valley. Ella raised her hands. The golden fire rose with her, swirling in a spiral of light that reached the clouds. Within that fire, shadows appeared, not dark and frightening but soft and shining. They were memories, not ghosts, images of the dragon's life. The hunters saw them all. They saw Arden lifting a baby from the storm, his claws gentle. They saw him teaching her to walk, to laugh, to dream. They saw him turn away from war, choosing peace instead. They saw a father, not a monster. One by one the hunters dropped their weapons. The flames reflected in their eyes, and their anger melted into shame. Ella stepped closer to them, her feet light against the stone. The leader tried to hold his ground, but his voice was weak when he spoke. "What are you?" he asked. She looked at her hands still burning with the gold light of life. I am both, she said. The fire of a dragon and the heart of a human. I was raised by what you feared most, and loved by what you tried to destroy. The wind grew gentle, carrying her words far. He gave me his flame so I could show you what fire truly is. Fire is not only for burning. It is for light. It is for warmth. It is for life. The hunters were silent. Even the sound of the river seemed to fade away. The golden fire around her began to sink back into the earth, leaving behind soft glowing dust that sparkled like morning dew. Ella turned and walked to Arden's side. She placed her hand on his scales, now cool and still. You gave me your heart, she whispered. Now I will use it well. As her tears fell, they turned to tiny sparks of light. The fire in her hands dimmed but did not vanish. Instead, it flowed into the air, spreading across the sky like a new dawn. The clouds caught the golden light, and for a moment, it looked as though the heavens themselves were on fire, not with destruction but with rebirth. The hunters knelt one by one. They bowed their heads not out of fear but out of understanding. The leader stepped forward, his sword lowered. We did not know, he said. We only saw a monster. We were blind. Ella looked at him with calm eyes. You are not the first to fear what you do not know, she said. But you can choose to learn. You can still change. The man nodded, his face pale but sincere. We will leave this place, he said. We will tell others what we saw. Ella gave a small nod. Go in peace, she said. The soldiers gathered their things and began to leave. As they moved down the mountain path, the golden fire followed them for a while, lighting their way. Then it faded, leaving behind only warmth in the air and quiet in the valley. When the last of them had gone, Ella stood alone beside the body of her guardian. The mountain was silent again, save for the soft rustle of the wind. She closed her eyes and let the warmth of the fading fire wrap around her like a gentle embrace. I will keep your promise, she whispered. I will be the bridge between our worlds. As she spoke, a soft light rose from the dragon's chest, a final spark of his spirit. It floated upward, circling her once before vanishing into the sky. Ella smiled through her tears. Goodbye, father. She sat there until the sun climbed high above the peaks. When she finally stood, the valley was no longer a place of sorrow, but one of quiet peace. The ground, once blackened by battle, now shimmered with new grass. The river ran clear again. And far above, in the golden morning light, the faint sound of wings echoed, a promise carried by the wind that the spirit of the dragon would never truly fade. When the storm cleared, the valley lay quiet once more. Smoke drifted slowly through the air, and the first rays of sunlight touched the wet stones. The battle was over. The soldiers were gone. The mountain, wounded and scarred, began to breathe again. Ella stood alone at the heart of the valley, beside the body of the dragon who had been her father in all but blood. The golden fire that had once filled the sky had faded to a soft glow around her, like the last light of evening. She felt the silence in her bones, deep and heavy. For a long time she said nothing. She only watched the still form of Arden, his scales dull now, his wings folded like old parchment. The wind moved through his claws and sang a low song, almost like a whisper. She knelt beside him and placed her hand on the great stone-like chest that had once risen with every deep, steady breath. You are gone, she said softly, but you are not lost. She worked for days to build his resting place. She did not use tools of metal, but her hands, her will, and the warmth of the golden fire that still lived within her. With care and love, she shaped the earth at the foot of the tallest peak, where the sun first touched the mountain each morning. She covered his body with stone and soil, and with every handful she remembered something he had taught her. The sound of his laughter, the strength of his patience, the comfort of his warmth on cold nights. When the grave was complete, she carved his name into a slab of rock. She wrote it in both human words and the curling script of dragons. Beneath it she carved a promise. Here rests Arden, last of the old fire, whose heart burned not to destroy but to protect. When she finished, she stood back and looked at her work. The sun had risen high, painting the mountain in gold. She felt the light touch her face and closed her eyes. For the first time in many days she smiled, not with joy but with peace. The days that followed were quiet. The hunters never returned. Perhaps they were too afraid, or perhaps they had truly learned. But others came instead. Travelers, wanderers, and lost souls found their way to the valley. They had heard stories, of the girl of golden fire, of the dragon who had raised her, of the mountain that now glowed softly at night. When they found Ella, they expected a witch, a monster, or a spirit. Instead, they found a woman with kind eyes and hands that were strong yet gentle. She welcomed them, shared her food, and listened to their stories. When they asked her what she was, she would only say, "I am human, but I learned to live like a dragon." In time, more people came. Some stayed, building small homes at the edge of the valley. They brought their families, their fears, and their hopes. Ella helped them understand the ways of the mountains, when to plant, where to gather water, how to listen to the wind. She never ruled them. She only guided as Arden had guided her. The people began to call her the Firekeeper. To them, she was not a queen or a goddess, but a guardian, one who held the light of a dragon's heart and shared it with those who sought peace. She built no throne, no temple. Her home remained the same cave where she had grown up, though now it was filled with laughter and the warmth of many fires. At night, when the stars shone bright above the peaks, Ella would climb to the highest cliff and look toward the horizon. Sometimes she thought she could hear the faint sound of wings in the wind, or see a flash of golden light in the clouds. She knew it was only memory, but it comforted her all the same. Years passed. The valley changed, but Ella did not grow old as quickly as the others. The fire within her slowed her aging, keeping her young and strong. Children of the valley would often come to her, asking for stories. She would tell them of the time when dragons filled the skies, when fire was a gift, not a weapon. "Were you afraid of him?" they would ask. "Never," she would answer. "He was my father. He taught me that true strength is not in fire or flight, but in love." Sometimes she would take them to the great stone where Arden rested. Flowers grew thick there now, glowing faintly gold in the moonlight. She would tell them to be silent and listen. And if they listened closely, they could hear a deep, soft sound, like the echo of a great heartbeat beneath the earth. That sound became legend. Travelers who passed through the valley spoke of it, saying the mountain itself was alive, guarding those who lived there. They said that when storms rolled through the peaks, the thunder was not anger but laughter, the laughter of a dragon proud of his child. Generations came and went. The valley prospered. People learned from Ella and from the stories she shared. They built no armies, raised no walls. They learned to live with the land, not against it. They passed on her lessons to their children, that fear could be tamed by understanding, and that strength was best used to protect, not to harm. As the years rolled into decades, Ella grew quiet. Her golden fire still burned, but softly now, like the last flame of evening. One night, she climbed the tallest peak, the one above Arden's resting place. The stars stretched endlessly above her. The air was cold, but her heart was warm. She whispered to the sky, "You were right, Father. They can change." They did. A gentle wind rose, circling her, carrying the scent of smoke and stone. She felt it brush against her face like a familiar touch. In that moment, she knew she was not alone. When morning came, the people of the valley found her sitting on the peak, her eyes closed, her expression peaceful. Around her, the air shimmered faintly with golden light, and where her hands rested, small flowers of flame had bloomed, warm, harmless, and bright. They buried her beside Arden, carving her name beneath his on the same stone. They called her Ella of the Fire, the bridge between scales and skin. And from that day on, whenever thunder rolled through the mountains, the people would look up and smile. For in the sound they heard two voices, one deep and ancient, one soft and human, laughing together in the clouds.